next speaker is Dr. Paula Olivares Guzman, or Dr. OG. It's okay to call her that. She completed her master's here at the University of Guelph and also completed a PhD here. She has moved on to a postdoctoral fellowship that she's a year and a half into at the University of Lethbridge in the Department of Neuroscience. And Paula is going to talk about automating lameness detection in dairy cattle. She's part of a big team out on the prairies who's looking into doing this.
Just trying to find the mouse here. Ah, that's why I can find it. There we go. Aha. Okay. Right. Thank you, Carol, for the introduction. Just following with what George just said, although this is not my first presentation, it is my first presentation in person because I was doing my PhD during the pandemic. So yes, I'm a little bit nervous. But thank you everyone for attending the presentation today. I'll be talking about relationships between gait traits and mobility scores on beef cattle. So I want to start by defining lameness. Lameness is a disruption of normal gait due to infection, injury, or abnormal conformation, which causes pain and discomfort, and it makes it a welfare concern. It is the second most treated disease in beef cattle that includes cow-cow farms. And it's the most common cause of railing, which means early shipping to slaughter, of beef cattle, and a common reason found in chronic pain pens. It is caused either by foot rot, digital dermatitis, also known as hairy heel warts, toe tip necrosis syndrome, but also laminitis, also known as founders, arthritis, injuries such as bullers, broken legs, and dislocations. For those of you who don't know what a buller is when an animal rides another animal, the one that's been ridden, that's a buller. It represents an economic loss, not just because of the treatment cost of drugs and labor, but also because of growth performance losses, such as reduced dry matter intake, reduced average daily gain, or days on feed due to early railing, or losses due to carcass condemnations, either partial or total. To determine lameness severity, there have been different scoring systems developed, and these scoring systems vary not just on the scale, they also vary by type of cattle, either beef or dairy, but they also vary in the way they assess lameness. They can be on individual animals or they can be as a group. So all these scoring systems rely on observer training and experience, which can lead to variability, and then we end up with low inter and intra-observer agreement. As you can see here, these are the results from our CAPAs that we did in the study, and you can see that we had sometimes fair, sometimes moderate or substantial agreement, depending on the mobility score that we are giving, right? So early detection of lameness is key to treatment success and timely railing. It is also important to send the animals on time, because if we wait too long, then the animal is going to become unfit for transport. It's going to go worse, and then it's going to we're not going to be able to ship it, and then we'll have to do salvation slaughter or just euthanasia. So the question here is how to objectively detect lameness in early stages when scoring systems have shown low repeatability and agreement among scorers. So a few options have been studied. One of them is the use of force and pressure platforms that you can see an example here on the picture. And these use fluorescence sensitive plates to measure force, pressure, and weight. However, these require expensive equipment, and this equipment has to be installed and placed in areas of frequent use, which make them not feasible for feedlot cattle. Another option is the use of accelerometers, like the one that you see here on this cow and on the leg. They are wearable sensor like Fitbits for cows, and they measure gait variables. They're mainly used in dairy animals, and they require at least 2 sensors per animal to accurately measure useful gait matrix. So again, probably not feasible in beef productions. Another option is the use of vision-based technologies. that use pose estimation to analyze the motion and posture of a walking animal, either using videos or sequential images. So as you can imagine, these are low cost, but the problem is that the automated marking and analysis is still under development. And this is where we're trying to work on. So I mentioned pose estimation, and I know probably a lot of you are not familiar with what pose estimation means. So pose estimation is a vision technique that determines object position and the orientation, and it requires a lot of manual annotation. And by annotation means that we have to put each one of these points on different frames, and we use a software that is publicly available called DeepLabCut. For the project, we determined 23 key points on the animal, and we are trying to reach 10,000 frames manually annotated by me and the student that's helping as well. So after we do the annotation, the software is trained and it learns the points positions so we can detect the key points automatically. And so once we reach pose estimation and it's good, these will help us in measuring of gait traits. So the question is, which gait traits? So there are gait traits mentioned in all of the scoring systems that exist. These are just a few of them, like limp, that it's defined as when one or more legs do not bear the animal's weight, as you can see on the hind right of this animal. Non-weight bearing is a type of severe limp, and it's when an animal avoids using one leg completely, like the one that you see here. Stiffness is the abnormal flexion or extension of a joint, and this animal is showing stiffness on all four legs. And then we have head bobbing, that is a short, quick downward and upward movement of the head that usually happens at regular intervals. That's like a normal or what we call a slight head bob, but sometimes it's at irregular intervals, like the one that you see on the right. That's an obvious head bob. Shortness of stride, just so I can explain it, we expect that the landing of the hind feet of the cow are at the similar position where the front feet landed on the same side of the animal. So whenever there is a gap between this landing of the feet, then we consider that shortness of stride. So I'll be just pointing you to the front feet and then the hind feet on this video. So you can see the gap that is very clear here, and that's considered shortness of stride. We also have an arch back. That's if we draw an imaginary line between the withers and the end of the back, the point in the middle of the back is going to be over this imaginary line most of the time, and by most of the time, we are considering 80% of the time. Then we have head drop. That is when we draw an imaginary line from the withers on a horizontal way from the ground. The pole of the animal is going to be below this line. So the study objectives on the short term, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on this presentation, is to determine associations between the gait traits and the mobility scores of animals. And then the ultimate goal is to develop a mobile device app that will help us identify lameness and assist in transport decisions. But in order to do this mobile device app, we have to tell the computer what to measure and how to measure it. So we did video collection at 4 commercial feedlots in Southern Alberta. Over 17 months, we randomized the feedlot visits to try and capture as much as we can of the lame animals. We are using tiny GoPro cameras that are mounted on power banks, so they last the whole recording session. And the cameras are placed in alleys at the exit of the processing barns, and they record the whole body of the animal, hopefully, because sometimes the animals just walk too close to the camera. We developed a modified mobility score system, and it's a modified version of the ones that exist currently for beef cattle. And it goes in a 0 to 3 scale, so 4-point scale, where 0 is a sound animal that has no apparent lameness or changes in gait. So you can see it's an animal that's walking very smoothly. A mobility score of 1 is an animal that will have a mild limp or a mild stiffness and may or may not show shortness of stride or head drop. A mobility score of 2 is an animal that has a moderate limp and or a moderate to severe stiffness, But it also may or may not show shortness of stride, a head drop or an archback. So you can see that the limb is very obvious on this animal. And finally, a mobility score of 3 is an animal with a severe limb, which means that the affected leg bears little or no weight. And it may or may not show shortness of stride, head drop, archback, or obvious head bob. So then I'm going to explain the video scoring process. We were 5 trained researchers by 1 expert, and we watched all the available videos from the animals. If you recall, we had 3 cameras, so sometimes we had 2, sometimes we had 3 videos per animal. And we gave a scoring based on the initial assessment of the videos that we watched, and after that, we watch each video individually and score, we score them in the gait traits. So we had a total of 230 animals of different mobility scores. And then we assessed stiffness or limb, head bob, head drop, archback, non-weight bearing shortness of stride. We then calculated Pearson chi-square test to determine associations between the mobility score given and the observed gait traits. So here on the graphs, I'm going to be showing the mobility score on the x-axis and the proportion of animals observed on the y-axis. And you can see the severity here, severity code on the right. So in here, you can see that we have a clear association between limb severity and mobility score severity, which makes sense because we have mild limb on mobility scores of 1, moderate severe on moderate limb on mobility score of 2, and severe limb on mobility score of 3. Non-weight bearing was only mentioned on mobility score of 3, so it makes sense that we only observe it on scores of 3. In the case of stiffness, we had mild limb mostly present on mobility score of 1 and moderate to severe limb on mobility score of 3, but we didn't mention stiffness on mobility score of 3, yet we observed a lot of severe stiffness here. In the case of head bob, you can see that slight or no head bob is normal, and like it's observed mostly on all sound animals. However, we did see that scores 2 and 3 had a higher frequency of obvious head bob. For shortness of stride, we observed that as the severity of mobility score increased, the shortness of stride was observed more frequently. And archback was observed mostly on mobility scores of 2 and 3. And head drop is frequently most often on 2 and 3, but we also observe it on mobility scores of 0. So in conclusion, we know that the gait traits are associated with mobility scores. We know that vision-based technologies are a potential solution to low inter and intra-observer agreement. And results of this study will help us in the development of an automated system that will consistently and objectively identify lameness using artificial intelligence. And it will help in early detection and early treatment and timely shipping for non-treatable reasons, and will assure that no unfit cattle are shipped. So this is one of the really cool videos that we generate from the project. These are the references that I used. And I just want to thank the support from all of our collaborators. And now I am open for any questions.